Welcome to the We Need to Be Loud podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the We Need to Be Loud podcast. Today, our guest is Kassidy Sauvé. She is a pro hockey player and currently plays at Premier Hockey Federation. Welcome, Kassidy. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much. I'm super excited to have you on the podcast because the gender pay gap in hockey is huge. And I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself, about your journey.
Yeah, for sure. I started playing hockey when I was around like 3 or 4. Became a goalie pretty quickly. Probably by the time I was 6, I was full go as a goalie. I played boys hockey mostly growing up with my brother. It was just honestly easier for my mom and dad to manage us when we were on one team. And then as I got older, I switched to the women's game in the last couple of years of high school. I was fortunate enough to earn a full scholarship to the Ohio State University, where I played for 4 years, and then I did a 5th year at Clarkson University. I was a member of the PWHPA for around 3 seasons. I went to Finland for half a season, and now I'm in the PHF. I played for the Buffalo Beauts last season.
Very, very cool. Sounds like hockey's always been like kind of your thing.
Yeah.
How would you say it is? Like, men's hockey, the NHL, obviously minimum wages there are around like 750,000, which is like the highest salary possible for females. What would you say? Were you able to live from hockey for a long time, or how does that journey look for you?
Like with obviously when I was younger, like my parents financially supported hockey for me. I think it's pretty much the same on the men's side when they're younger as well. Then as I got older and being able to have a scholarship and being able to play for free essentially at a university was great. Then when I was in the PWHPA, I didn't make much money playing hockey, so I did have another job on the side, do a lot of coaching just to make some money. And then the PHF, when I joined last year, the wages are definitely significantly more livable. So that's been nice. I've been able to primarily focus on hockey again. And I will still do like odd jobs on the side, mostly just because I like to keep busy. But I think we're getting to a point where you definitely don't have to have a secondary job to play hockey, which is nice.
Would you say, though, you make enough money to just live, or can you also save up a little money?
I'm more of a saver, I think, to begin with. So definitely have been saving some money, but it's obviously not like the NHL where, like you can spend and save at the same time. I do think as female hockey players, we definitely have to be more cautious with our spending just because we aren't making millions of dollars. So while it's great that we are making an income, it's still significantly different.
Do you think that there's still some players that maybe don't make enough that have to work a second job?
Yeah, for sure. Like last season, the league minimum was $13,500. So any of those players making the league minimum would have had to have a second job or financial support from whether it was like family or friends. But this coming season, it is going up to 30,000 US, which is definitely better. I would say that's still not like a very comfortable, livable wage, but it's getting there, and it's good to see it rising every year for sure. So it's getting there, but it still has a long way to go. That's for sure.
I think it's interesting because hockey seems to be kind of a pioneer in the US with money, because I think basketball is one of the biggest ones where they barely earn anything, some of them. So I think it's good to see that, hockey takes those steps in the right direction, but it's still insane if you think about having 30,000 for that like minimum versus a man who has like 750,000. Like that's a huge gap. What do you think? Where does this gap come from?
I think at the end of the day, I think it's investors, and being able to invest in the women's game is huge. Obviously, like the PHF has some great support and people who are willing to do that, but I think you have strength in numbers, and while there's a good number of people supporting our league, I think that more people need to be aware of it and more people need to support it. And I think when you're growing anything, it takes a little bit of time, but it's good to at least see it's trending in the right direction and not, at least it's getting better, not worse. So I think as female athletes, we've gotten used to being able to like see these small growth opportunities and realize like how grateful we are. But at the same time, it is really difficult to see that you put in the same amount of work, the same amount of effort, and you are getting significantly less.
That's a really great point you mentioned right there, because it is the same amount of work, maybe even more, because if you don't earn a lot, you have to work a second job, you're overworking and still not getting the same amount, like even if you have a second job, you don't earn as much as an NHL player, which is sad, but I do think like parts of it is too, female sports seem to be less attractive. Not as many people watch it. They're not streamed as much. Do you think that's due to the sponsors, or is that just because people don't want to watch it?
I mean, I do think people are starting to want to watch it. I think it's just the accessibility. It's getting better. Like our league is on ESPN Plus, which is great. Being able to see more games on the actual TV versus having to stream it, I think would be huge. So I do think it's like trending in that direction where like the league championship this year was on ESPN, which is great. And, when you're trying to grow something, the more exposure you can get, the better. So I do think that it is trending in the right direction, but it needs to be a little bit more, more sports broadcasting partners and stuff like that.
So more money, more sponsors to even get it on TV, I guess.
Yeah.
Then there's the question, do you think that if we had more money and it would be streamed more, there would also be more resources available to pay the players?
Yeah, I do think so. I mean, right now, like a lot of the money is coming from specific investors, but if you begin to have like more sponsorship deals with the league and whatnot, there's definitely more money to give around, especially to the players that are making less. So,
of course, yeah. So going back to what you said earlier, you played in Finland. I think you played for HPK Naiset for, you said, half a year. How was it there in terms of payment?
Yeah, I mean, experience-wise, it was awesome. I would go back there in a heartbeat if I was able to make a livable wage. Like I had so much fun. But essentially their structure with what they're able to do on the women's side in Finland is they provide you with a stipend. So you get housing and you get food, but you only get a monthly stipend. And I think that's kind of where it makes it difficult for, women my age or women coming out of college to make that move to Finland or to Sweden or whatever it may be, just because the money, like you're not going there for the money. And I think that going into it. But it's definitely a pretty big gap, I would say, compared to even women's hockey in North America. There's definitely a huge gap. And I know just from playing in Finland, there was a huge gap between our team and the men's professional team. So they had a nicer rink. They had, they made more money. So even there's still a gap in, hockey as a whole. So.
Would you say it's justified with the level being much lower in the European countries, or was the level pretty high compared to where you play now?
I would say it's, the level at the time was really good. I do think a lot of European players are starting to come over to North America because of our salary cap increase, which is great, but you also don't want to be pulling people from a different league, which makes it a little bit difficult. But the caliber was really good. I think it's just resource-wise, they're not quite where we are yet. So it's very hard for them to throw money into something when they don't really know what's going to happen with it right now.
And I think that's kind of a trend we see in a lot of sports, that people move to a different country because of the salary, which obviously harms the leagues there, which I think is big for female sports, that we try and get more money for those leagues so we can keep the players there, make the level higher, and make the whole world sports for females more attractive.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you look on like the men's side, the NHL players obviously make more than the players in the European leagues, but the European League players do make quite a bit of money, like enough to live off of for sure. I've had male friends go and play hockey in Europe and make a very good amount of money. So I think it honestly just depends on what you're going for and what you want. But um, for females, it's not as attractive right now to go to Europe to play hockey just because there is such a difference.
That totally makes sense. So what do you think it is that everyone could do to make this better?
Honestly, I think my biggest thing is just give it a chance and watch women's hockey. I know a lot of people don't give it the time of day, but then there's a lot of people, like especially in my circle and in my life, they'll take their son to a women's hockey game and he has the greatest time. And I think that's the biggest thing is not necessarily getting young females involved because they already are and they already have their role models, but getting people who are less exposed to women's hockey involved. And I think that's where it makes a huge difference is you can have all of the female support you want, but if you don't have the support of young boys and men, it makes it hard. So I think just having that exposure to that other half is very important.
So do you think that's partly in charge of the club to like work together with men's and women's side to make it more attractive to them, or do you think every individual can do something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think like in a perfect world, having like a female hockey team partnered with a men's hockey team would be great because then you already have that exposure and people who go to that men's game know that there's also a women's team. So I think something like that would be super beneficial. When I was in Buffalo last year, we went to Tulsa, Oklahoma to play in just like an exhibition game against Minnesota. And they're like our ownership owns the Tulsa Oilers, which is a ECHL team there. So even those people got to see women's hockey, which is not something that they're always exposed to. And we created a lot of fans on the way and a lot of people that said they want to watch us play next year just because of how much they enjoyed it. So doing little things like that and getting the exposure on both sides, I think is so important for the women's game.
Of course, yeah. You mentioned something about how stadiums are usually bigger, obviously, for NHL teams or male teams. So, how can we expect a typical women's stadium? How many people fit in there? And what are like the ticket prices there?
I would say like most rinks in our league are between like, gosh, like 800 and maybe 2,000 seats, which is obviously significantly smaller, but I think for right now is not a bad thing just because you don't want to have a massive rink with a lot of empty seats. Like that's not fun for us to play in either. So I think as you're growing the game, you can make the rinks bigger as you go. But I think for right now, that's not a bad standard for women's hockey. I think like it's important to obviously get more and more people out, and I think like it looks better when it's a full rink. So our tickets, I think you can buy season tickets, which I think are cheaper than buying just like individual game tickets. But I think like a game ticket would be like $25. So not super expensive, definitely affordable if you're wanting to see women's hockey for the first time. It's not going to break your bank. So
Which I think on one hand is super cool that it's that, cheap, but on the other hand, maybe it doesn't make the image better of female
yeah,
hockey because it's like, oh, it's so cheap, and if you go to the NHL, it's obviously much, much more, which is
yeah,
partly of where their income comes from. It's from ticket sales with thousands of people.
yeah,
So saying you only have maybe 2,000 seats and they're all going out for $20,
yeah,
you only make so much money. So do
yeah.
you think increasing ticket prices would help with the budget for females too?
I think there's like a fine line of increasing them to the point where people don't want to come versus like making them something that's affordable for a whole family to go to. Um, I feel like, I mean, it's hard because you don't want to push people away by increasing prices, but at the same time, you want to make it worth it. And I think part of it is when you go to an NHL game, it's a full experience. Like the lights go down, there's the national anthem and all that. And, there's snack stands everywhere. Like there's all those things that you pay for during your NHL experience. And I think maybe bringing some of that stuff, like we obviously have concession stands and whatnot, but making it more of like you're going to experience something great versus just going to a hockey game. I think you can increase the prices if you do stuff like that.
Absolutely. And I think that's another point. It's not just not on TV as much. It's also the experience, as you said, is different. I know that some people even have such small stadiums. They maybe only play in front of families,
Yeah.
So I think that, as you said, it's a fine line. You don't want to make people like not being able to afford it. And you want to get more people, obviously, to come. But at the same time, I think, as you said, it should be worth it. And you players are professional athletes, so I think there should be an amount to pay to see you guys play,
Yeah.
So I think it's difficult to find a balance, but also increase, income and budget. So
for sure.
Definitely not easy.
Yeah, definitely have to walk the fine line with that one.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. Well, that's really interesting. What would you say? What is one thing that players maybe do to, I call it, get loud and speak up for female athletes? Are the players taking initiative, or do you not see that?
Yeah, I mean, we have like a lot of opportunities where we can get involved in the community, and I think that's something that makes female sports so special is we do take the opportunities to get involved with the community because it's our way of branding ourselves. On the men's side, you don't really have to do that as much. I mean, you have all of the exposure that you need already. So for us, it's an exposure thing, but it's also like, I mean, every person that I've ever played with, I can genuinely say likes being involved in the community, likes meeting little fans and stuff. And I think that's a huge difference for us between us and the men's game. So, yeah, I mean, we like to do that stuff, and I think it's very important because that's how people get to know you, and that's how you grow a fan base.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously we have reasons to be more humble, right? Because we don't get paid as much as male athletes. It's interesting though, because male athletes, obviously everyone knows their names, they have a lot of fans, they don't have to really engage with the community, as you said. But I do think that that's a really cool thing, that females are maybe more approachable for people. They're more humble, more personalizable. So I think that's really cool. But thinking about having more payment in the future, do you think that that will stay with the female sports? Female athletes will stay that way? Or do you think that will change?
No, I do genuinely think it'll stay that way. I mean, for myself personally, I don't see myself not coaching in the summer and working with younger goalies, or if a young fan comes up to me after a game, I don't see myself being like, nope, I'm good, I don't want to sign your jersey. It's just, I think it's kind of ingrained in who we are, and we love when people are at our games and are supporting us. So why not? They spent money, and although it might not be a lot of money, you don't ever know like someone's situation on how hard it was for them to get to our game. So by repaying them with a simple signature and a photo is honestly not a big deal to us. And I think it'll stay that way for a long time.
And I think that's really cool, and also maybe a motivation for all the sponsors to know, hey, we invest money in a female sports, but they're going to give something back to the community, which I think that's something really big right now in a time where maybe there's not as much personal contact anymore because everyone's on social media. Also, there's not as much like grace and genuine people maybe anymore. So like, I think that could be really cool to think about for those investors to see, hey, yeah, I'm going to give them money, but they're also going to do something great with it. They're going to be a part of the community, help younger athletes, So do you think that could be something we should promote more so that investors get attracted to investing in female sports more?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you have community involvement, it is really good for investors, and it not only grows our own brand, but it also grows theirs as well. when you're representing good people, good things happen. So I think that that's something that they can definitely take into account.
Absolutely. What would be your wish in like time frame wise? How quick would you like to see increases in money for female athletes?
I mean, in a perfect world, I'd like to see it, tomorrow. But like I said before, I do think we're getting there. And although it's not quite like the NHL, I do think that compared to where we were when, I was just graduating from university, we've come a long way. But I mean, in the next couple of years, it would be nice. For sure, before I retire, I would like to see that increase just so I can reap the benefit of it a little bit. But yeah, as soon as possible, I guess. But I know stuff like that does take time.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, that would be obviously really cool if you could experience it. But I think long term, it's just nice to know that we're improving and hopefully getting there. But I think it's important for us to stay on top of it. And as I said, like be loud about it, speak up about it, because I think where we make progress, it's also easy to lose that progress again because there's still not as many sponsors, So while I do think that we're on the right path, I think we have to make sure to involve everyone to make sure that we keep increasing those salaries and speaking up about it,
Yeah, for sure. I think it's exciting to fans when they see a salary increase or a salary cap increase, let's say, because they know that while we're getting more money, that makes the product better at the end of the day. With the more money you get, the better players you draw in, and the more fans you get. So as a whole, it's all encompassing.
Do you think that more sponsorships will also increase the quality of like youth teams and then long term increase the whole quality of hockey?
Yeah, I think about when I was growing up and playing hockey, I would watch the NHL all the time. And that made me want to play more. So if you take that on the female side and you have young girls watching their role models, it makes them more eager. It gets more girls registered. I mean, you see it like when we run camps for youth hockey, as soon as they find out you're a pro hockey player, they want to do the same thing. So I do think that kind of stuff is really great. And at the end of the day, I do believe that it helps grow the game, not only on our level, but in the grassroots levels as well.
For sure. It's interesting because all those little girls probably think, oh, a pro hockey player makes so much money. And then they find out the truth about how it is for female sports.
Yeah.
Growing up, did you think that you're going to be a millionaire?
Well, I honestly thought I was going to be in the NHL. So yeah, like I thought I was going to be the first girl that was like actually on an NHL team. But that didn't work out, but I guess I'm not doing too bad.
That would have been really cool. I don't
Yeah.
even know. Would that be allowed? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, maybe in like an emergency situation, but
For
I
sure.
think that now that there's actual opportunity for females, I think it's less likely.
Yeah. I mean, also from like physical aspects wise, probably doesn't really make
Yeah.
sense,
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
funny.
Yeah.
Well, who knows? Maybe we'll see it one day, but hopefully we see more budget on the female side so that no one even wants to be in the NHL.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. That would be nice.
well, it's been really great talking about the money part, and thank you so much for sharing. Now let's go into another aspect that I really like to cover in my podcast because mental health is obviously a big issue right now.
Yeah.
And I love talking about the mental aspect of the game.
Yeah.
So, do you personally work with like a sports psychologist, or what's your experience with that?
Yeah, for probably the past 6 or 7 years, I've worked with a sports psychologist on and off, kind of just depending on how I'm doing or, I think a lot of it has to do with when you connect like physical injuries to the mental side of it. So I've done that quite a bit over the past 6 or 7 years. I usually take a break in the summer because there's not a lot of stress in the summer in terms of like not preparing for games or anything. So kind of nice mental break in that sense. But I do think it's really important for all athletes to have some sort of support system, whether that's a sports psychologist or some people only really need to chat with their family or friends about what they're going through. But I do think it's super important for athletes as a whole.
So do you think that's what helped you becoming a pro athlete, or do you think you would have made it without the mental aspect?
No, I definitely think it was helpful. I mean, when I was in college, I had an injury that took me out for pretty much the whole season. And when you're in your environment, but you're not allowed to participate, it makes it really hard. And, you kind of get a little bit emotionally run down. So that's kind of when I started working with a sports psychologist. And it actually ended up helping me on the ice a lot more with my mental game, which was really cool to see. Because I was like, oh, I'm just doing this to like help myself stay motivated, but it ended up as a result making me more calm mentally on the ice. So I continued to do it just because I saw how beneficial it was. So I definitely think having a strong mental game is what helps athletes get to the top.
Absolutely. So do you have like a mental routine going on, or how does that look for you?
I honestly think the biggest thing for me is just like almost not thinking anything. As a goalie, the more you think, the more you get in your own head. So for me, it's like I get the thinking over with before I step on the ice, and then it's you do what you know and what you've been practicing for years and years. So I was able to learn how to do that with a sports psychologist and just having mental cues on the ice, like stay calm, stay confident, stuff like that. But never like beating myself down mentally on the ice or having like negative internal thoughts. You just block those out for the 60 minutes, and then however it goes, you revisit it after the game and decide what you need to fix or what needs to be better next game.
That's a really good point, of course. Do you do mental workouts like weekly, daily, or is it just kind of like if you need it, you do it?
When I would say when I was going through my injuries in university, I did. Now I feel like it's more so just I don't have to do it. It just kind of happens on its own. Like if I need a mental pause or if something's bothering me, I'll journal it. But otherwise, I don't really have to do it as much anymore just because it kind of naturally occurs in my head. So it's kind of nice.
That's a really cool point, because I think a lot of times when we start working with a sports psychologist, it feels so not natural. It's hard. We have to remind ourselves to do it all the time. But it actually does become easier, as you said, and those pauses, you know how to do it. It just works. If you need it, it just works.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's really encouraging for younger athletes to think about, like, yeah, it might be hard in the beginning and you might not want to do it, but it will definitely help you along the way.
Yeah, for sure. Even stuff like before a game, I'll do like breathing exercises. And now it's not even something I have to think about. Like it just right before I go on the ice, I do it, I feel better and then I go out and have fun. So stuff like that
That's
gets
really
easier the
cool.
more you do it.
For sure. Yeah. That's really cool. So another topic right now that's kind of big is that a lot of female athletes seem to kind of burn out, maybe step away from sports a little bit. I think about it that way. I think that because a lot of them have to work like next to playing pro because of the gender pay gap, I think that they maybe burn out quicker. Do you see that in hockey too, or is that less present there?
I would say it's less present in women's hockey. I think if people step away, it's more so just to use their education. Because like the positive side of women's hockey is, I would say probably 95% of us have a college degree, which is very different than the men's side, obviously. Like a lot of them will go to school, but they get pulled out, their second, third year to go play in the NHL. And some of them don't ever go back and finish it. Whereas like we stay all 4 years, we get our degree, and then we see what's next kind of thing. So I think on the women's side, if someone's leaving the game, it's because they've realized that they want to pursue their academic career more, or they have a better opportunity. So I wouldn't say there's as much burnout, but I think with our game volume being significantly less, it's hard to burn out because we do have like a smaller schedule.
That's good to know, yeah. So do you think if we had more payments available, would they be less likely to leave hockey and go work somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, I think if it was between two jobs and hockey was paying more and someone was doing well at it, they were, getting a lot of ice time. They liked being on a team and stuff. There would be no reason for them to leave. Um, a lot of what you see right now is people who are kind of very close to the end of their career, might be on the third, fourth line, and then have an opportunity for like an actual day job and choose to pursue that just because it makes more sense to them. But I do think that, you would have a lot more people wanting to play longer if there was more money involved.
I would agree with that. Do you have any final comments or anything you want to tell the people out there?
I think for me, just like I said before, the big thing is just watch women's hockey, watch women's sports. The more you watch, the bigger our fan base gets and the more support we get as a whole. So it's an exciting game. I've had a lot of people watch women's hockey for the first time and say, wow, I didn't know it would be that fast and that intense. And I think that you can't judge it before you watch it. So give it a shot and see how you feel about it afterwards.
That's so good. So remind us, what are the dates of the season? Like, what months do you play?
We'll report to training camp in September. I think the season's starting a little bit earlier this year from what we've heard. So probably start exhibition games early October, and then the season goes all the way through mid to late April.
So everyone out there, did you hear that? October is when the season starts. Make sure you turn female hockey on and give it a shot. Thank you so much, Kassidy Sauvé. I wish you the best of luck over summer with your injury recovery, and then hopefully we'll see you on TV soon. Take care.
Thank you.
And everyone else, get loud.